Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Unmarked Chaser, a position that I think has incredible value right now in Quidditch, is constantly underused or undertrained, so that people aren't kind of at the level they need to be to exploit that opportunity. And I'm lucky to be joined by one of the best Unmarked Chasers around, Grace Dastous, and also one of the best coaches of Unmarked Chasing around. And we're going to kind of break down specifically in this episode all the things you can do as an Unmarked Chaser without the ball in their hands to kind of get the most value out of the position. And then we'll be coming back next week with a part 2. We'll be talking about what you can do when the ball is in your hands, as well as what both coaches and teammates can do to kind of maximize the opportunities for Unmarked Chasers to really succeed and kind of maximize their value. I really hope you enjoy. Please like and subscribe to the channel so you can make sure you see part 2 when it does come out, as well as all the other content we put out. Thanks so much to Grace for coming on to this episode, as well as everybody who helped her with this presentation. And I hope you guys enjoy. Let's get into it.
Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the position, the Unmarked Chaser. And before we kind of get into details about it, I just want to kind of go over why I'm using the term Unmarked Chaser and not the term female chaser. And there's kind of a bunch of reasons for this, one of which is that anyone could be unmarked during a game. Like, I'm thinking specifically like about a fast break. During a fast break, defense might not be able to come and defend you, so during that you may be unmarked. So it's really important that you know where to cut and timing and everything like that. Also, like, in my opinion, the Unmarked Chaser has it's like a whole different position. Like in basketball, a guard would play much differently than a forward. We have different cuts, like we have different timing, different strategy. Additionally, it may not be filled by a woman, so it could be filled by someone outside of the gender binary. And at the same time, we'll see this a little bit in some of the clips, but a woman on the field might be marked, and the male could be unmarked, or there could be another woman that's unmarked.
Yeah, for sure. Also, zone defenses, usually multiple people are unmarked at a time. And also, I think that just the kind of tips and tricks you're going to share in this show are helpful for literally everybody, because there are so many people who just stand around on a Quidditch pitch and aren't moving while they don't have the ball in their hands. And I think there's so much room to be gained for so many people just from following these tips.
Yeah, like I often have difficulty when I'm marked, and so it's kind of vice versa. Like someone who's usually marked might not quite know what to do when they're unmarked.
Yep. So let's talk about what you can do as an Unmarked Chaser.
Right. So these are what I call the danger spots. So in this slide, the blue stars are like the 4 danger spots for an Unmarked Chaser. The green is going to be the ball carrier, purple is where the passes would be aimed at, and orange is the keeper. So if you look at where the blue stars are, they're slightly like right in front of the hoop. You don't want to be like right next to the hoop. You kind of want to be in front of it. That's like the easiest spot to just literally catch it and just drop it in the hoop. And so this first image is when it's in front of the hoops, and then the image on the bottom right is when it's behind hoops. So those positions kind of change. You want to be on the same side as the quaffle player for the quaffle.
Yeah, and I think these positions kind of also maximize, because the quaffle players aren't perfect. They're going to throw some bad passes, and they can throw you into more spaces that still leave you dangerous than if you're in some other positions. And I think a lot of people tend to hang behind the hoops, which I think you're about to get into, and we can talk about why that's maybe not as dangerous.
Right. So I call this like the not so dangerous spots, like you said. So the red dots indicate the spots that are really, really difficult to pass to. And that's because there may be defenders that are tagging up. There could be beaters around the hoops, especially in that 2-2. Mm-hmm. And also the keeper's right there. So if you have someone with like really long arms or really long reach, they could just get that pass right away. So I wouldn't recommend waiting in those spots, because you're not really doing anything. You're not really serving a purpose. Unless you're like 6 feet tall and like Rachel Heald and have like an amazing passer who can't pass like anyone else.
Right. And I mean, even then, the pass usually has to have some loft to it, which kind of takes away some of its effectiveness. It gives the defense a little bit more time to respond to it. And otherwise, you get those passes that I think we've all seen, the ones that it looks like it's a perfect pass until it hits the rim of the hoop, and then it just goes flying and nobody can do anything with it anymore. And by getting all the way around the front of the hoop, you take that risk out of the play.
And even when those passes happen, those individuals aren't like right on the hoop. They're a little beyond too. So it usually ends up that they get a pass farther away from the hoop and make a move and then shoot.
For sure.
So the reason that these spots are so dangerous is there's kind of two situations that can happen when the unmarked chaser is in that spot. So the first thing that could happen is the keeper just ignores the unmarked chaser altogether, so that when the ball carrier drives forward or drives left, they can dish it off to the unmarked chaser who's completely open.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. And even on those 2-2 zone defenses, even if that one person has to kind of play that unmarked chaser true because they're at the hoop, it a lot of times opens that shot to the middle hoop that otherwise wouldn't be open. It's kind of how Heat went about attacking Cavalry in that original finals game, by kind of having that person keep checking down to that hoop.
Right.
So I think we're going to look at a clip here.
Mm-hmm.
Rose got
If you actually even turn on the volume for this one.
Oh no, but it's my voice.
It is, but it's like I perfectly cut it, so it's literally you talking about how John Jackson is cheating Casey.
All right, let's watch.
know how quick Jackson's closing speed is, and he's definitely leaning towards early.
And there's the pass. Yeah.
Yep. So basically, they were able to wait for. She was able to wait for the perfect opportunity, I would say, where he had kind of stepped out just the slightest bit, and that's when she slid in.
Right. So first he was cheating her.
Right.
And then he kind of went to the ball carrier into the drive, and then that's when Augie dished it off.
Exactly. And she hadn't gone too deep, where I think a lot of people check down too early, and then they're not as dangerous to be hit with a pass because they're not moving, which kind of reduces the range you can throw to them. Plus, they've gotten closer to the keeper, so even if the keeper stopped cheating, they might be able to get to that pass.
Right. And so that's kind of the first situation. The second situation in that would be that the keeper or the defender totally respects the unmarked chaser, and in that case, that is great because then the ball carrier can just drive in.
For sure. So we were just talking a little bit about how Casey would timed her cut so well, so let's get a little bit more into that.
Yeah, so if, like, the basic is just staying by the hoop, but if you really want to become a really good unmarked chaser, the timing of your cuts are super important. So I, like, as an unmarked chaser, I'm always looking at the ball carrier. And I'm varying my speed. Either I'm speeding up or slowing down based on what they're doing. If I'm too early, then the keeper obviously is going to cover me or be able to read the pass. But if I'm too late, I might miss the play completely,
right,
or I might get injured because the keeper saw it. So there's a really good example of Lindsay. In this video, she you can. Sorry.
No, you're good. That was my announcer voice. That was not me.
You can see her kind of slowing. She starts to cut, then she slows down because John kind of slows down, and then she runs again. So she's looking at what they're doing.
Right. So she kind of slowed down into that corner, and now she's going to make this cut. Oh, sorry, I was looking at Molly that entire time.
Oh, yeah. I also made a note that Molly was open in a danger spot in that position too. For sure.
Yeah. And I think there's kind of a thing there where people think you have to run all the time, and I always kind of like those almost slow, like stutter steps, as though you're kind of doing that kind of drill, because to have some motion increases your range of being able to get to a pass and how far you can run rather than being flat until the last second.
Right.
So I think this other one is going to be a clip of you.
Yeah. I just watched so much film for my MLQ tryout videos, so.
No, hey, you 100% deserve to be in here. So you just took, I don't know if people saw, but you just took a little stutter step there just in case the play had started, and then you backed off again. And then once the drive actually happened, you actually did a full-on run.
Yeah, and that was important because you could kind of see that, like, Jake actually moved backwards. And because Jake moved backwards, I knew he wasn't going to be able to pass me at that time. So I actually moved backwards.
Yeah.
So you're almost kind of mimicking what the ball carrier is doing.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of unmarked chasers. Basically, in that play, for example, as Jake was coming around that corner, they would have made a full cut instead of you kind of making that half cut and back out, and then they'd be at the hoop, and they would be completely out of the play because they basically would have to reset their entire positioning.
Right.
Right. Let's look at the next slide of going towards the hoops.
Yeah, so if you look at that diagram there, so if the blue is the unmarked chaser circle, so this off-ball cut towards the hoop, that cut happens again when the off-ball chaser is the ball carrier is driving. And it's so important to note that most of these happen while beater play is happening. Right. And it's best to do it when that's happening or when the beater's distracted, because then that leads the keeper to be more focused on the ball carrier and makes the pass so much easier.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, most beaters, especially in the upper echelons, if they're not being distracted, are going to make that turn and beat on you 9 times out of 10, unless that pass was really, really zipped. So you need that distraction to be this close to where those beaters are kind of set up. So which one would you like to start with?
Why don't you do the Washington one? This is a good one of Jules.
Alrighty. So we'll find her on the field. She's right over Harry Greenhouse's shoulder there on where my cursor's pointing.
Can you show where the beaters are? There's going to be beater play. So I think it's right behind the ref.
Okay. Yeah, must be. I don't see any of your beaters right now, but I can start the play and see if anybody shows up. Yep, so Max is here and Lulu is here. Yep. And she's waiting. She's biding her time, as is the ball carrier.
So she even waits to cut until Lulu starts to make, right?
Exactly.
Lulu, the two male beaters engaged with one another, and then Lulu steps to Dale, I think his name is.
Yep, that's correct. Yeah.
And then that Jules cuts.
Yeah, the second Lulu takes that first step is when Jules takes her first step. And that's something that's so Jules. She had the shot in her mind the entire time that ball was flying to her. Like, she hit probably like a 10-foot shot without almost ever looking at the hoop after catching the ball.
She has such an amazing shot.
She really does. Let's go over to this finals one next.
This is like a classic Teddy and I play, I believe.
I think I know which one this is, yeah. So beaters are going. So this is just creating space for Teddy.
Right.
And
you don't even see, I'm not even in the shot of the film. Like, you can't even see me, which furthermore states that, like, you want to be out of sight until the last minute.
Right. And then you come in and you hit with the pass there.
Yeah.
All right, and let's look at this third one. So this time you are right next to Jake on ball right now.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you're kind of just running a not very aggressive route out towards the wing. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Do you see where Max is right now?
Yeah.
Max will frequently, like, go with me and say, give the ball to Grace, give the ball to Grace. Like, and he's calling for that because he knows how dangerous that spot can be.
Right.
So as a beater, you can also help the unmarked chaser, like, become completely open.
Right, because we were talking about how, let's say no beater exchange is happening yet. It looks like something's about to happen. But if you cut into this space here, usually Kylie would have this beat very easy if Teddy threw you that pass. But with Max in this space, now you have more spacing. He could block what she does. He could catch what she does. In this case, she doesn't even have to. So talk a little bit about the arm spacing that you use there and kind of how people could use that more effectively when they catch a ball, because that defender did get to you before you had a chance to just catch and release.
Right, and this is something I think you talked about in your most recent midline video, but when a keeper, and we'll talk about this a little bit more too, but when a keeper steps, you can kind of use their momentum. And so I'm a righty, and I want to keep my shooting arm free. Mm-hmm. So when I get close to another person, I usually push them off with my left and then set my feet and then take a shot. Yep. They're going to think that you're going to do it immediately, and because of that, they're either going to rush to tackle you or they're just going to be on the hoop.
Yeah, I think besides you, I think maybe the most famous example of that is Erin Mowry's goal that won that overtime game, the buzzer beater goal. She does the exact same thing where she uses her left arm to fully space herself from the keeper and then throw over him.
Right. All right, so the next kind of cut that we see is kind of the backdoor cut. And this one is like one of my favorites because the keeper defense doesn't even see you coming again. And if you look at these two diagrams, like you can either do like a straight cut to one of the hoops to that danger spot, or you can kind of do like a really roundabout one, right, and time it with the ball carrier and cut at the last moment.
So let's start with this one up here. I'm going to go back a bit. Oop, maybe too far. Yep.
Oh, that's good.
So Lindsay is the one here on the right side of the screen who's going to make this cut, and this is the roundabout version of the cut, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you saw how she timed that, because the keeper did see her originally, but she kind of waited until Teddy's drive forced the keeper to pay more attention elsewise, and then kind of really cut that in.
Right. I think the one on the right is another example of that roundabout cut.
Okay.
It doesn't look like Harry's passing to me, but he was passing to me.
You cleaned it up well enough.
But yeah, that like the roundabout is a really good kind of slow cut to do. And then you want to speed it up as you get around the corner.
Right.
This is kind of Erin in this one does the other cut, so straight to the hoops.
All right. Erin's out of frame right now, I believe. Yeah. Yep, just straight to the hoop. Yeah, and one of the nice things about the roundabout is because a lot of keepers are kind of keeping track of the unmarked chaser in the back of their head. So when you do the roundabout, you're often on the side of the field that they basically weren't processing you as a few seconds prior.
Exactly. So it's like playing a mind game with the keeper.
Yep.
I do want to notice, though, that this also is happening when beaters are happening.
Right.
Or beater play is happening, because like you said before, if it's not, the beater can just turn around and beat you.
Yeah. I also would say that even if you're a mark chaser in a situation, both these cuts can be used. And one of the things I always teach my players, if you're making one of these cuts while marked, if you basically have your inner shoulder brush kind of the outside of the hoop as you're going by, there's no real route for your defender, provided they're at least a half step behind you, to kind of get to that pass without either going through the hoop or goaltending. So you can kind of still make yourself open just by being that tight to the hoop when you're making this cut.
And I would say, as a marked chaser, the timing is probably even more important.
Right. Yeah.
Because if you sprint to a spot, that there's you can beat a defender.
Right.
If you time it right.
All right, and let's look at another kind of unmarked chaser cut.
So this is kind of basic, like fast breaks, but in this diagram, during a fast break, these are the 4 lanes that everyone should be covering.
Right. Or
everyone should be running down. So oftentimes, if Jake is running down the middle, I'll go to the left. or if Ryan and I are on the right side, Brian will go around the hoops. So this is just another example for fast breaks. You do kind of want to be in front of the ball carrier a little bit so that they can see you and know that you're a passing option.
Yeah, we see way too many fast breaks where the ball carrier sprints out, and if everyone's behind them, they basically don't have a passing option. Even if those people are running, like 1 or 2 feet behind them, they have no way of seeing those people or really getting a pass to them. And I 100% agree. These are the lanes I love to see in a fast break, and we're going to look at one here. So you do set a little screen there just to give Jake some early room to operate, and that's because so many fast breaks can just be stopped by someone getting a wrap on the ball carrier just all the way back in their territory, even if that person takes a beat.
Right.
So you can see every lane. You're running down this lane. I can't tell who's on this wing, but they're running down the left lane.
I think already by the hoops.
Yep, exactly. And you made yourself as dangerous as possible by kind of cutting directly towards that hoop at the end. Because you don't want to be too tight to Jake early because then the defender can cover both of you, but you want to be tight enough to the hoop at the end.
Exactly.
All right.
So here, kind of, these next couple slides, I'm going to go over like the moves that you can make around the hoops. Because it is intimidating when you do catch it by the hoops and there's this big keeper or big defender right there.
Right.
So these are a couple kind of examples of a good pump fake.
Mm-hmm.
And a pump fake is great because when you do fake it, the keeper jumps. And when they jump, that's your opportunity to make a move. I think Aaron in this situation.
Yep, he's eventually going to get the ball. Exactly. Yeah, because you obviously don't want, and it's even easier in the MLQ rules, you don't want the keeper to be able to cover multiple hoops, so you make them commit with that pump fake.
Right. I think this one's Athena. And this was actually a good example because if you're on the right side of the hoops and you're a righty, like we talked about before, I'm on the left side. I use my left arm to push off and then my right arm to make a move.
Right.
Whereas Athena on this instance is catching on her right side. So she does a little pump fake and then does a move so that her arm is still free.
Right.
I think this is another Aaron one.
Yep, she's going to get the ball behind. Yep. And no, on that one, she specifically timed it well where she threw as Ian's body was coming back down to the ground. So he had no flexibility to defend it, even though she threw it to the hoop that was right over him. So I feel like a lot of people are kind of nervous to do this pump fake because it's like, well, I don't want to get a hit on this play. And if I pump fake, maybe it lets the keeper get 1 or 2 steps closer to me. So how do you kind of make that determination of when it is the time to pump fake versus when it is the time to maybe make a different move or shoot right away? So
it really, honestly, for me, it kind of depends on the situation. Like a very strong keeper. I'm thinking Tyler Trudeau. I'm thinking John Jackson. Like they could literally just take you out.
Right.
In that case, I probably wouldn't make a move like that. And someone who's is going to tackle you immediately, I probably wouldn't make a move. But it's still useful practice. Like I think one of them I did make a move on Tyler. So it's if you have a move going into it and execute it immediately, there's almost no way that someone can respond that fast to your move. Yeah,
for sure. And I think in a lot of these, we saw Ian Skura, who's more of a blocking keeper. I think Teddy was guarding the hoops on one of them. He's obviously someone who needs to maximize his spacing, so he's going to go for a block rather than a wrap. And I think all these players made that determination correctly. So now the other thing we were talking about, which is what if the keeper overcommits?
Yeah, so if this is a couple great shots of Lindsay and Jules. I think Jules. Oh no, maybe it's just Lindsay. But if the keeper steps too aggressively to you, just step to the side, and they literally are going to be behind you now, and then you have a free shot.
So we'll look at a couple of these. This is from the original MLQ finals.
Oh, it is. I think it is Jules.
Yep. So yeah, I think obviously Yada kind of sold out for the hit there, and Jules basically saw that coming.
Right. Which is that if you have a like we said before, if you have a keeper that likes to tackle a lot, this might be the better move for that.
Right. This is from the game I think I just reviewed the other day. Oh no, it's from a different game. Nope, no, it was that one. Yeah, that's the one we were just talking about. Yep. Where you're able to position your body and keep your arm free for shooting.
Right.
And this is a Lindsay clip. Nice. So, what do you think of that kind of almost bend down move that I think we've seen Lindsay do a couple times now? I feel like it's almost a little bit unique to her. Just kind of keeping her body out of the way of high wraps is probably the idea.
Mm-hmm. It's also, I think you can make a really strong drive or pivot if you're that low. I think it's just a more athletic stance.
Right.
But yeah.
So yeah, and then the last thing we were talking about is shooting into an open hoop.
Yeah, so this is especially in MLQ when the hoops are so wide, if you're standing at one of those small or the medium hoops, the keeper's gonna think that you're just gonna catch it and dish it in. So you can use that. You can either do a pump fake to that small hoop and then shoot middle, or you can just get it and shoot middle. But that would have to, again, your positioning has to be correct, where you have to be far enough back so that you do have a shot to both hoops.
So let's look at some of those situations. And I think you talk about it right there, where it's you probably don't have either your other options. You don't have time to pump fake. You got hit immediately after you shot, and you don't really have time to make a move because you had taken both hands off the broom, so you had minimized flexibility. So that shot really kind of was your only option. And I think that's something we didn't even talk about as much in the other ones, which is kind of sometimes you don't, if you're going for a two-handed catch, which is what you should do, you don't always have that moment to readjust into your agility again.
Right.
This is another Lindsay one. Yeah, and she was able to get that keeper to so hard overcommit, just assuming that was that shot.
Right.
And the reason she was able to is because I think Harry's pass took her away from the hoop, which made it a little bit more susceptible to that. And I think a lot of people are always like, well, why wouldn't I want to be as close to the hoop as possible? And the reality, as you were saying, is that if you have a little bit more space, you actually make it harder to defend because you have multiple options.
Right. So I want to talk about when's not a good time to cut to the hoops, and we've already kind of talked about these a little bit, but when teams are in a 2-2, it's difficult because usually there's someone near the hoop that you want to cut towards.
Right.
And so it doesn't really cause the same kind of situation where the keeper would cheat to you or have to commit to the ball carrier. And then we already talked about the second situation where there's a beater right next to you. And so I love cutting. So in this video, you can see me wanting to cut and noticing that there's a person there. So I back up and keep my body moving so that the ball carrier has a passing option.
Yeah, so obviously if Jake tried to get you a pass there, I think it's pretty easy for the keeper to cut off all your available options, especially because you're directly horizontal to the hoop, so you have no shooting opportunities.
So I think it's really important to keep your body moving. Like, don't just go to the hoops and stop there. If it's not there, you need to back out or move to a different spot.
Right. And I think the reason that you're comfortable doing that is because you obviously can be used as the unmarked chaser as a ball handling weapon as well. And I think that's what we're going to talk about in our next video.
What a good segue.
So everybody, thank you for watching, and we will come back with part 2 talking about ball handling.